Butters' very own episode. Butters is first abused directly by his parents in this episode. After discovering her husband's infidelity, his mother suffers a breakdown and attempts to drown Butters by driving their car into a lake with him inside. He narrowly survives, unaware at first of what happened. Later, his parents openly describe the events in front of him, forcing him to process both his father's secret life and his mother's attempt on his life. The combination of attempted filicide and parental betrayal marks one of the darkest abuses he faces. Jared has AIDS, liposuction, and parental beating. Manipulated by Cartman, Butters undergoes a dangerous homemade liposuction attempt. The boys leave him scarred and terrified. Later in the same episode, Cartman impersonates him on the phone, saying vile things to his parents. When Butters' parents return, they physically abuse him for the supposed disrespect, believing Cartman's impersonation. This is one of the few times the show depicts his parents resorting to direct violence against him, solidifying their pattern of abusive parenting. The return of the Fellowship of the Ring to the Two Towers. In this episode, Butters is unintentionally exposed to hardcore adult material when Randy mixes up a tape with the family's rented Lord of the Rings. After watching it, Butters is traumatized and obsesses over the content, imitating Gollum's behavior and referring to the tape as his precious. Although Randy initiated the accident, the boys fuel the damage by keeping the deception alive, leaving Butters consumed by the tape's imagery. The incident demonstrates abuse through careless exposure to age-inappropriate material, shaping his perception of reality in disturbing ways. Casa Bonita. Cartman exploits Butters by convincing him a meteor will destroy Earth. He locks Butters in a bomb shelter for a full week, telling him they are the last survivors. After removing him from the shelter, Cartman stages an attack by cannibals, pretending to be killed. Butters is left abandoned inside a refrigerator, later discarded at a junkyard. During this time, he believes his family and friends are dead, and that he is alone in a destroyed world. This deliberate psychological manipulation is one of Cartman's most severe abuses against him, causing extreme fear and despair for an extended period. Raisins. At the Raisins restaurant, a waitress manipulates Butters for higher tips, pretending to show him affection. Butters believes her attention means they are romantically involved. When she clarifies that she was never his girlfriend, he experiences devastating heartbreak. Although less violent than other abuses, it still involves emotional exploitation. The imbalance of power with an adult misleading a child for money makes the act harmful. This form of abuse highlights Butters' innocence and inability to distinguish genuine affection from manipulation, leaving him vulnerable to emotional harm. Good times with weapons. Butters becomes a victim when Kenny throws a ninja star directly into his eye. Rather than seeking proper medical care, the boys disguise Butters as a dog to avoid getting into trouble. They cover him in fur and force him to bark. Their deception results in Butters being taken to an animal shelter where he nearly faces euthanasia. The incident shows physical harm followed by neglect, as his supposed friends prioritize hiding their actions over helping him. Butters suffers extreme pain and humiliation, compounded by the real threat of being put down while mistaken for an animal. Preschool. When Trent Boyette is released from juvenile detention, Butters becomes his primary target. Years earlier, Butters refused to defend Trent after a playground fire, fearing punishment from his parents. Once freed, Trent brutally assaults Butters using a variety of painful bullying tactics. He gives him severe Indian sunburns, multiple titty twisters, a Charlie horse, and even a Polish bike ride, leaving Butters hospitalized. Unlike other instances of trickery, this abuse is purely physical and relentless, showing the severe consequences of schoolyard grudges. The attack is depicted as both prolonged and merciless, making it one of the most violent beatings Butters experiences. Stupid, spoiled whore video playset. Paris Hilton decides she wants Butters as her pet, abducting him and dressing him in a bear costume. His parents at first resist, but when offered $200 million, they accept. They demand $50 million more before finalizing the sale. During this process, they tell Butters he can avoid being sold if he personally raises the same amount of money, leading him to mine coal pointlessly. This event shows his parents treating him as property, prioritizing wealth over their child's safety. The abuse lies in both Hilton's objectification and his parents' betrayal, reducing him to a transaction. Cartman's an incredible gift. Butters' parents send him to a psychiatric institution after believing he suffers hallucinations. There, doctors conduct invasive and prolonged testing on him. The transcript reveals he undergoes 14 continuous hours of these tests, presented in ways more aligned with torture than medical care. The treatment is depicted as degrading and dehumanizing, stripping him of dignity under the guise of evaluation. The psychological toll of being restrained and experimented on without understanding the purpose makes this one of the most disturbing abuses he suffers. It demonstrates institutional abuse, where authority figures exploit a child under the cover of treatment. Margarine. The boys fake Butters' death by throwing a pig carcass from a building in front of his parents. Believing their son has died, his parents bury the remains in an old Indian burial ground. When Butters later reveals himself alive, they assume he has returned as a resurrected monster. Fearing him, they chain him in their basement. The abuse escalates when they lure an interior designer into their home and kill her with a shovel in front of Butters, urging him to eat her remains. This combines neglect, imprisonment, and forced exposure to violence inflicted entirely by his parents. Cartman sucks. Cartman humiliates Butters by secretly photographing him in a compromising situation. The photo leads Butters' parents to believe he is gay, and they send him to a conversion therapy camp. Although Butters himself remains largely oblivious to the intended purpose of the camp, he witnesses other children suffering emotional despair, with some taking their own lives. The abuse here comes from both Cartman's exploitation and his parents' decision to subject him to harmful, coercive treatment. This represents institutional and parental betrayal, with Butters placed into an environment where the harm around him is inescapable and deeply scarring. Coon and Friends Trilogy. During the boys' superhero roleplay, Butters is forced into the role of Professor Chaos, the villain. They lock him in their makeshift jail for nearly a week with no food beyond what he can scavenge, and only a bucket to relieve himself. He is also used in Cartman's schemes, such as dressing him up as Courtney Love to blackmail Captain Hindsight. The mistreatment is both physical and psychological, as his friends strip him of autonomy while mocking his character. Being confined and humiliated in this way shows how their play routinely crosses into direct abuse against him. Psychiatrist episode City's Sushi Insecurity arc. Butters' parents send him to a psychiatrist after believing something is wrong with him. During treatment, the psychiatrist reveals his own instability. He urinates on Butters while he sleeps, and later manipulates him into participating in a jewelry store robbery. When Butters protests, the psychiatrist switches personalities and blames Butters for the crime. The experience leaves Butters terrified, trapped under the control of an authority figure who abuses his position. This form of adult exploitation demonstrates a betrayal of trust and places Butters in dangerous situations where he faces both humiliation and criminal consequences. 2012 election episode Obama Wins. Cartman pressures Butters into silence regarding election fraud. To avoid revealing what he knows, Butters threatens to eat an almond M&M, which would trigger his severe allergy and kill him. The intimidation escalates until he swallows it, sending him into medical crisis. While Cartman does not physically harm him, the psychological pressure is so extreme that Butters attempts self-destruction rather than face further abuse. This demonstrates the extent of Cartman's control, using fear and manipulation to corner Butters into endangering himself. The event underscores the cruelty of forcing a child to risk death to protect another's secret. Butterballs. Butters' grandmother visits and subjects him to continuous bullying. She insults him with cruel names, physically hurts him, and undermines his self-worth. Unlike bullying from peers, this comes from a family member, which deepens the betrayal and emotional impact. The abuse is shown as a pattern, with her behavior framed as ongoing whenever she is around. Butters tries to fight back by becoming Professor Chaos, but she dominates him even in that alter ego. The direct abuse from his grandmother reveals how trauma can originate inside the family, making it harder for Butters to escape or resist effectively. Butters' bottom bitch. Cartman manipulates Butters into unknowingly running a prostitution ring. Butters believes he is simply helping girls find boyfriends, while Cartman exploits his innocence for profit. Authorities later view Butters as the organizer of the ring, placing him in a dangerous legal and moral situation. This abuse is not physical, but rather systemic exploitation. Cartman turns Butters into the face of a criminal operation without his understanding. The manipulation highlights how Butters' trust and naivety are consistently weaponized against him, leaving him responsible for acts he never intended, while Cartman avoids accountability. Safe space. PC principal forces Butters to filter online comments to protect students from negativity. What begins as a task to shield Cartman becomes overwhelming as Butters is compelled to process endless streams of hateful content. As more students request his services, the workload grows to an impossible level. Exposed daily to some of the worst language and cruelty online, Butters experiences a mental breakdown, eventually running naked through the school and leaping from a second-story window. The abuse comes from coercion by authority, where his refusal would have resulted in punishment, leaving him trapped in a destructive, psychologically damaging role. And if you thought Butters had it rough, wait until you see how far Peter Griffin has gone. Because yes, he's actually killed people. Click over now to watch every Peter Griffin kill explained.